And I'm actually surprised that we had a polling segment like the set up there that I didn't even have to like annoy people by being like, I would love to talk about that poll. Because even in that CNN poll, Trump has 70% disapproval on the economy. 2/3 say the country is going in the wrong direction. And there was also the Atlas Intel poll that had Democrats up 15 points.
Hey everyone, so glad you pulled up a chair for this one. Today we're sitting in on a Fox News panel that turned into a real tug-of-war over where the country is actually headed into the next election cycle. On one side, you've got Jessica Tarlov armed with a stack of polling numbers, and on the other, you've got Jesse, Greg, and Paul firing back with jokes, jabs, and one accidental confession that honestly stole the entire show. The economy, the credibility fights, the spin about who's really winning, it all collides right here. Now I'm telling you, stick with me all the way through, because the most important line of this whole thing doesn't land until near the end, and if you tap away early, you're gonna miss the exact moment one of them says the quiet part out loud. Trust me, it reframes everything that came before it. And while you're here, I'd genuinely love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop your city or country down below. I read these and it always amazes me how far this little community stretches. Alright, enough from me. Let's get into it.
CNN's data guy, though, just gave a reality check. Listen.
I think this poll serves as a big-time reality check for Democrats, and that is, it ain't over yet, especially with the redistricting when we look ahead to the 2026 race for Congress. You would have thought that the Democrats' lead would expand on the generic congressional ballot. It didn't happen. It is within the margin of error. So despite all of the talk about Donald Trump's unpopularity, the fact is Republicans very much remain in the game when it comes to the congressional midterms.
Some of the Dem candidates aren't doing themselves any favors. Far-left Michigan Senate frontrunner Abdul El-Sayed says he's getting called out now in Politico for calling himself a physician, but turns out he has very little history treating patients, only, if I read the stuff correctly, about 4 weeks of an internship somewhere. Let's pick up there, Jesse. This guy, El-Sayed, this move to call yourself a doctor, we have seen people try and kind of like fudge this.
Yeah, I used to call myself Dr. Feelgood in college, but just a nickname, didn't really matter. Not giving any medical advice. I do have to say something about Jessica. I saw her in the green room the other day, and she was crying. And I said, what's wrong? And I tried to console her, and she said, Jesse, the Democrats lost the redistricting war. We're going to lose 12 House seats.
That's not how it happened.
I said, here, take my pocket hanky. And she dabbed her eyes, and she goes, the only way we're going to win elections now is if we steal them. And I said, it's okay. You guys are very good at that. But that's the reality, 12 seats. And if you look at the generic congressional ballot, it's too close for comfort. You guys can't raise any cash. The DNC's broke. Trump has a massive war chest. And I get it. You know, Trump is now taking so many issues off the table because he's been successful. No one's talking about crime, culture, the border, because those aren't issues anymore.
There is
the
no
only
culture
issue, the trans thing, we don't even talk about it anymore. You guys lost that big time. On the economy, yes, gas prices are high because there's a little excursion. The Iranians shut down the strait, but he's not going to get pressured into a bad deal. And in the meantime, that will hurt Republicans. He's not on the ballot. So he's looking for the long-term interests of the United States. The reason you guys aren't getting any traction on the economy is because gas prices were higher for much longer under Biden. And you ran up the inflation rate to 9% and said it was a good thing. So stop. You guys made the country weird. You had guys with little nails, trans, running all over the White House, chasing Binder while Biden was asleep in his suit. You guys got to do what you need to do. Run a Nazi oyster farmer. Run a pastor who says God is gay. I don't care. Run a woman that dumped a scalding hot thing of potatoes on her husband's head. Whatever you need to do. We're the underdog. We like to run like that.
You have to understand something about how this whole segment is built, because the setup tells you everything. They bring out a data analyst, Harry, to deliver what they call a reality check, and the line they want you to walk away with is that Republicans very much remain in the game. And sure, fine. But notice what got quietly admitted in that exact same breath. Harry said it himself, that there is all this talk about a certain president's unpopularity. He didn't deny the unpopularity. He just pivoted away from it as fast as humanly possible. That is not a victory lap. That is damage control dressed up as analysis. And here's the part that blows my mind. The moment the data gets uncomfortable, the entire table stops talking about numbers and starts telling jokes. Jesse launches into this whole bit about calling himself Dr. Feelgood in college. It's funny, I'll give him that. But watch the magic trick. The second the conversation moves toward an actual physician who actually has credentials being questioned, Jesse turns it into comedy hour so nobody has to sit in the real argument. Then he goes further. Jesse says the DNC is broke, says they can't raise any cash. And let me break down why this matters, because money in politics is not destiny. Some of the most well-funded campaigns in American history have lost spectacularly. Ask anyone who remembers the 2016 spending gap. Cash is a tool, not a guarantee. But the line that really gives the game away is when Jesse claims nobody is talking about crime, culture, or the border anymore because those aren't issues. Think about that. If you genuinely believed you were winning on those issues, you would talk about them nonstop. You'd never shut up. The fact that the strategy is to declare them closed and move on tells you they're nervous about exactly the thing they're pretending to own.
But yet, Jessica, I
Let me take my
believe
hanky
that Democrats and
Yeah,
Republicans are polling essentially the same on the economy. The president doesn't have the leg up that he had planned to have at this moment because of the Iran war.
No, absolutely not. Listen to James Blair, who's in charge of the midterm strategy, and he does not want to talk about the economy. They're all now at least admitting that gas prices are up, or that it's a little more expensive when you go to the supermarket, but all of that will be fine in time. It'll be great by when we get to November. And I'm actually surprised that we had a polling segment like the set up there that I didn't even have to annoy people by being like, I would love to talk about that poll. Because even in that CNN poll, Trump has 70% disapproval on the economy. 2/3 say the country's going in the wrong direction. And there was also the Atlas Intel poll that had Democrats up 15 points. Obviously, that is too much. But you have a 3.8% inflation report. Now the wages, the inflation is outpacing your paycheck, which you always throw in my face. You're like, with the paychecks. Well, now it doesn't matter what you're earning. Democrats are favored on education, healthcare, employment, inflation, trade, taxes, even crime. Can you believe that?
I don't believe that. No, I don't believe that. Because you guys release criminals all over the street.
Anyway, there's a Harry Enten clip for everything. Check out the one. I'm sorry, my voice is worse than usual. You really upset me with that crying thing.
Greg, what do you think about this young Dem, James Taylor Rico, bringing in Barack Obama? I'm not a political strategist, but it strikes me as a risky move because the guy's got a lot of star power. It doesn't always translate to
Rico does?
Former President Obama.
Who's that?
The star power doesn't always translate to people he endorses, like Kamala Harris. Also, he tends to outshine people like he did there in line at the taco joint.
This is the moment the entire panel shifts, and Jessica does something the rest of the table spent 10 minutes avoiding. She brings receipts. And here's what people don't realize about how these shows work. When one person finally puts hard numbers on the table, everyone else suddenly remembers they'd rather tell jokes. Jessica points out that James Blair, the person literally running their midterm strategy, does not want to talk about the economy. Sit with that. The strategist in charge of winning is steering away from the kitchen table issue that decides every election. That's not confidence. That's a man who has seen the internal polling and didn't like what he saw, and then she just unloads. Jessica lays out that even in the poll they brought up, there's a 70% disapproval on the economy, and 2/3 of the country saying things are heading in the wrong direction. That's the detail I can't get over. They picked the poll. They chose the battlefield. And the battlefield still says most people think the country is off track. But the knockout for me is when she rattles off the issues Democrats are favored on. Jessica says education, healthcare, employment, inflation, taxes, trade, and even crime. And here's the response. Jesse says, I don't believe that. You release criminals all over the street. That's it. That's the whole rebuttal. No counter number. No competing poll. Just I don't believe it. You have to understand when your only answer to data is I refuse to accept the data, you have already conceded the argument. Disbelief is not a fact. It's a feeling. And feelings don't move a generic ballot.
Yeah, neither of them know what a street taco is, or else they wouldn't have one. Look it up, people. Look, I am actually going to agree with Jessica. I am tired of Harry Enten. First of all, we aren't babies where we can be abruptly entranced by a new shiny object. And in this case, it's always every day, it's a shock poll. And one provides a bath of dopamine for Jessica. The next day, a shower of serotonin for Jesse. Meanwhile, Harry Enten is like going to bed on a pile of money surrounded by cocaine and call girls. It's all a scam. Don't listen to it. You never know how things are going to turn out because Republicans don't talk about how they vote. That's how Trump surprised everybody. I want to talk about Abdul El-Sayed. You can keep your doctor, by the way. That's Obama said that. He claims he's a doctor, but he isn't a doctor. Who does he think he is, Jillian? Dr. Jill? What is it with Dems and false credentials. You know, no wonder they hate voter ID, because they can never provide any proof of who they claim they really are, whether it's their social programs, their daycare centers, their asylum seekers, their war heroes, their sentient president. Nothing is ever what they say it is. They create phony charities and lofty titles for the people who run them. What happened to the money for the fires from the giant benefit that was to happen? $100 million. Illegals become undocumented. Abortion becomes birth control. Prisons become carceral oppression. If the Dems were accurately labeled, no one would go near them. So we don't have a lot of this stolen valor on the Republican side. We can't afford it. People would find out about it. But in this case, this guy was probably telling everybody a doctor, and they were fine. And you're right, Trump's numbers aren't great, but he's got an ally in the Democrats.
I just want to say...
No, I'm not done yet,
Well,
Jillian.
I don't want to...
Stop pointing your finger at Paul. He did nothing to you. Look, you know what Trump is like right now? He's like having a bad back, okay? And I got a bad back. But then you look over at this guy, he's got leprosy. That guy is the Democrats. So it's like, as long as the Democrats are so profoundly unpopular, Trump can pretty much do anything, because the Democrats have no way up. They have no way out. Back to you, Jillian.
No, are you sure you're done?
No, I can keep going.
That was such a great point. I want to say I have not inflated my credentials.
No.
I am completely unqualified.
And here's where it gets almost too honest. Greg spends this whole stretch going after a candidate's credentials, hammering that he claims he's a doctor, but he isn't a doctor. It's a clean attack line, I won't pretend otherwise. But what fascinates me is what he says next, almost by accident. Greg admits something the rest of the table would never say out loud. He says the president's numbers aren't great, but he's got an ally in the Democrats. And then he goes even further, saying that as long as Democrats are so profoundly unpopular, the other side can pretty much do anything. Do you see what just happened? In trying to land a punch, Greg accidentally told the truth about the whole game. He admitted his own side isn't winning on strength. They're surviving on the other side's weakness. That is a completely different thing. One is a mandate. The other is just being the last one standing in an empty room. And that's what I keep coming back to. A party that has to root for its opponent to be unlikable instead of making its own case is a party running on fumes. History is full of this. Incumbent parties that coasted on the other side's stumbles instead of delivering results almost always got humbled. The moment voters had a real choice in front of them. Confidence built on someone else's failure is the most fragile confidence there is, so Greg can keep going as long as he wants. But the most revealing line of the entire segment wasn't an attack at all. It was the quiet admission that the only thing holding the whole thing up is the assumption that the other side will keep losing. Bet your entire strategy on that, and you'd better hope you're right. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.